Hi, I'm the Amazing Atheist. And if you got murdered in Louisiana today, well, tough shit. You ain't getting any news coverage. The only thing that the news in Louisiana is covering right now is the oil spill. For those of you who don't know, there's a huge oil spill right now in the Gulf of Mexico, and it imperils our fish and our birds and our otters. A BP oil well, more than a mile beneath the surface of the Gulf, has exploded and is releasing over 200,000 gallons of oil every day. The spill is so bad that the Huffington Post and the Drudge Report actually both agreed that it was the top story. I've been reading both of those online newspapers for quite some time now, and I have never seen them agree on the top story. No matter how huge a story is, one of them is trying to downplay it. This is the first time that both of them have said, okay, this oil spill is the most important story. Now remember how John McCain and Sarah Palin, during the election, they wanted more offshore drilling, and they kept saying, drill, baby, drill.
The chant is drill, baby, drill. And that's what we hear all across this country in our rallies, because people are so hungry for those domestic sources of energy to be tapped into.
The government is also deploying the military. 2 C-130 cargo planes have been dispatched to spray more chemicals on the sheets of crude before they reach shore.
That was like their little mantra. You don't hear too much from them right now. I haven't heard what John McCain thinks about this oil spill, and I haven't heard what Sarah Palin thinks about this oil spill. Not that it matters. Just recently, President Obama gave in to their demands. Even though he's the president and they lost the election, he decided that we do need more offshore oil exploration. But now that this has happened, Obama's changing his tune and saying, oh, well, we're going to have to put a halt on those plans until we get greater regulations on drilling. Yeah, okay, every time there's a big spill, we talk about the need for more regulations, and then we say, oh, well, you know, even though they're not following the safety checks that they have now, we're just going to add more safety checks, and that ought to solve the problem. It's not going to solve the problem. And a lot of people are saying, whose fault is this? Is this the government's fault? Is this BP's fault? You know whose fault I think it is? I think it's our fault for continuing to be dependent on oil. Oil is America's crack. Seriously, if you look at Western civilization's relationship to oil, it is the relationship between a drug addict and his drug of choice. We discovered oil and wow, we were flying high. It's like there's nothing we couldn't do. We went to the fucking moon on oil. But now we're getting into the later stages of addiction, and we're going off to fight wars over oil, and we're spilling oil into our oceans and our rivers, and it's getting all over the animals, and it's killing the fishing industry. And all these fishermen right now are pissed off because they are out of work. They don't have a job because they don't have any fish, because the oil is killing all the poor little fish. And if you've ever been to Louisiana, you know that a big-ass chunk of our economy is seafood. We love seafood. And all those tasty little Gulf shrimp that we like to indulge in, they're going bye-bye for a while, because no one wants Gulf shrimp a la crude oil. America needs to get off of the oil tit. It's never been a renewable resource. We've always known that it was going to run out, and yet we have not heavily invested in an alternative source of energy. There was a march on Wall Street. It was a small march, less than 10,000 people showed up, so it was well smaller than the 60 or 70,000 people that showed up to the 9/12 Tea Party protest in Washington, or if you were watching a conservative outlet, the 7 billion people that turned up to the 9/12 march in Washington. But you know what the great thing is? Despite the number disparity, there were probably more black people at the Wall Street march than there were at the 9/12 march. And by the way, Michael Moore brought up a good point on Larry King the other night. Why don't the Tea Party protesters protest on Wall Street? Don't they hate these corporations and what they've done to America, supposedly? I know they blame Obama, but the part of the reason they hate Obama is because he gave our money to the banks. So why aren't they protesting the banks? Why aren't they protesting America's financial structure? Why haven't they taken their protest to Wall Street? It's a really intriguing question. It's just one more thing that leads you to believe that their movement is rooted less in politics and more in, racism. And it's always been kind of strange to me, the fact that conservatives have no black supporters. Well, very few black supporters. Democrats get something like 90% of the black vote every single time. That's really odd, because the Republicans are the party of Lincoln, who was behind the Emancipation Proclamation. He freed the slaves. You know, we can argue all day about what his motives were or what he actually felt about the slaves, but the fact remains that he did free them. But you know, the conservatives, they never bring up Lincoln. The Republicans, they never say, we are the party of Lincoln. They always want to be the party of Reagan. That's how fucking stupid the Republican Party is. When they can choose between one of the greatest U.S. presidents and one of the worst U.S. presidents, they choose the worst. They're like, this is our guy, we're proud of him. We're going to name libraries after him, we want him on the $50 bill, we want him on Mount Rushmore, he's great, we love Reagan. I also want to talk about Arizona's new immigration law, which 64% of Arizona voters agree with. The Arizona voters, they couldn't be happier about this new law that restricts their freedoms. Basically, the law says that you can be arrested for being an illegal immigrant. Though the question is, how do you spot someone who you suspect of being an illegal immigrant other than by the color of their skin? You know, what sort of signs of being an illegal immigrant are there other than being Mexican? And the great thing is that all sorts of other states like Texas and Georgia and Oklahoma and Ohio and Maryland are all considering similar laws. They want to make illegal immigration a crime. Of course, illegal immigration is already a crime, but they just want to be able to racial profile in order to catch the people who do it. Of course, they don't want to call it racial profiling because that would be wrong, so they say, well, you know, if we pull someone over and they happen to be an illegal immigrant, then we'll put them in jail. But the problem is, they could already do that, so why the new law? What's the necessity? The necessity is they want a racial profile. And I wish they'd just have the balls to admit it. I wish... You know what I really wish, actually, now that I'm making wishes? I wish these people would admit that their problem is not with illegal immigration. Their problem is with immigration. They don't like foreigners. They're a bunch of fucking xenophobes. And none of them want to admit it. And the reason I know that they're all a bunch of xenophobes is because I was watching this documentary called Outfox. And okay, it's a liberal documentary, it's biased, whatever. But they had this former Fox News reporter on there, and he was talking about this story he did about legal immigrants. People who go through the procedures and become documented U.S. citizens. And Fox News killed the story. They said, no, these legal immigrants, they're leeches too. They're scum, they're shit. Don't make a positive story about these legal immigrants. So it's obvious that the conservatives, they just hate fucking immigrants. They don't like people who don't talk English. They don't like people who don't meld perfectly into what their idea of American culture is. I was born and raised in America, but I'm a psychological immigrant because I don't mesh with the culture. I don't get down with what the American idea is. I don't get behind their flag-waving cheerleader rah, shish boom bob bullshit. I don't care. I don't care about your jingoistic nonsense. It's primitive and I want nothing to do with it. Okay? And yeah, I like America. America's a cool place, don't get me wrong, but the second you start becoming so damn passionate about it that you think it belongs to you and that no one else should have any, then you're just a greedy fuck. And you don't even know what makes America great, because if it was up to you, America would be a shithole like everywhere else, because what you want is racial superiority. You want racial purity. But more important than racial purity, you want ideological purity. You want everyone to think the same. And you don't want foreign elements and foreign ideas contaminating the America of your dreams, the America that you believe in, the America that Sarah Palin calls the real America. The America of redneck hicks who've never read a book that wasn't written by Tom Clancy. Those Americans, the real Americans, the heartland Americans. Americans like me, we don't count. Americans who crossed deserts and rivers and whatever else to get here, those Americans don't count either. Even though they did more to become citizens than you did. You were just born here. It was your birthright. You did nothing to earn the status of American. And you should be glad that immigrants want to come to this country, because prosperity is what attracts immigrants. You know a country with a huge immigration problem? In fact, an immigration problem that probably rivals the United States' immigration problem? Mexico. That's right, citizens of all these Central American countries immigrate to Mexico because Mexico is more prosperous than the countries that they come from. And then, of course, all these Mexicans immigrate to America. And it won't be long now before all of these Americans are immigrating to Canada. So you motherfuckers should be glad. The very fact that people want to immigrate to America means that America is still a shining beacon of whatever sort of freedom that you're actually proud of. That means we actually have something to offer. The day that we don't have an immigration problem, that's going to be a bad day, because that means we have a far worse problem. We have a prosperity problem, or a lack of prosperity problem. And that's far worse than an immigrant problem. My book, Evil Scum, is supposed to go off sale tomorrow, May 1st, but I'm extending it to May 3rd. After that, no more copies sold, off the market forever, don't even fucking try to get it back. Okay, you can get Evil Scum right down there, last fucking chance, don't even ask me beyond this. Dear George Lucas is an open letter that I made to George Lucas, bitching at him about how terrible the fucking Star Wars prequels are. You can also view that below. And on May 5th, I will be broadcasting an interview that I conducted with this man, Mr. Howard Bloom. He is the science writer who is responsible for such books as The Lucifer Principle, Global Brain, and The Genius of the Beast. He's been described as the new Einstein and the new Stephen Hawking. He doesn't quite have that level of recognition yet, though, but let's see if we can help him with that. Because he's a real bright motherfucker. In fact, he's the first motherfucker I've ever talked to who made me feel stupid. So tune in for the interview on May 5th and find out why Richard Dawkins is wrong, why America needs a vision transplant, and what is truth. Real great interview. May 5th, remember that. Amazing Atheist, peace the fuck out! Have to add Howard to the wall of incalculable awesome. There he goes. Right next to Captain Picard. That's a pretty good place to be, in my opinion.